Samuel Johnson stepped into the jewelry store with nothing but a modest coat and a quiet smile, completely unaware that today, a stranger's sneer would ignite a change that would alter the lives of everyone who crossed his path. If you're ready for a story about unexpected turns, quiet strength, and the power of kindness to reshape lives, make sure to subscribe now. You won't want to miss this journey. Mr. Samuel Johnson walked down the busy street with a gentle, unhurried pace. Dressed in a simple coat and worn hat, he moved gracefully, a quiet man with a sturdy posture. Those who knew him greeted him warmly, waving and smiling as he passed. Children playing on the sidewalk stopped to wave, and he smiled back, nodding in acknowledgement. He carried himself with the ease of someone who had lived long and seen much, his eyes gentle but filled with depth. As he strolled, a particular jewelry store caught his eye. Its windows gleamed, showcasing sparkling necklaces, rings, and bracelets set against deep velvet displays. Samuel slowed down, gazing at the pieces with a soft, thoughtful expression. A certain necklace drew his attention, a delicate piece with a single emerald pendant. It reminded him of something, or rather, someone. For a moment he stood there in silence, lost in memories of his late wife, her laughter, her kindness, and the way she had always lit up when she wore jewelry he had gifted her in their younger days. A bittersweet smile played on his lips as he took a small step closer to the glass, peering more intently at the necklace. Suddenly, his phone buzzed, breaking him out of his thoughts. He fished it out of his pocket and squinted at the screen. It was his banker, calling to remind him about a business meeting scheduled for the next day. Samuel chuckled softly to himself and nodded, thanking the banker before hanging up. The reminder of his upcoming meeting brought him back to reality, yet his gaze lingered on the necklace. He made up his mind. Today, he would go inside and inquire about it. Pushing open the heavy glass door, Samuel stepped into the store, the cool air and scent of polished wood welcoming him. Inside, the store was pristine, filled with well-dressed customers and polished glass cases. Samuel took a deep breath and approached one of the displays, his eyes still drawn to the pendant. He stood there patiently, waiting for assistance. After a few moments, the store manager, a tall, brisk man with neatly combed hair and a tailored suit, took notice of him. Mr. Whitaker, as the name on his shiny gold badge read, gave Samuel a quick once-over, his face instantly taking on an expression of impatience. Mr. Whitaker's gaze lingered disapprovingly on Samuel's coat and hat, his lips pressed into a thin line. Without greeting him, Mr. Whitaker walked over with a half-forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Can I help you?" he asked, in a tone that sounded more dismissive than welcoming. Samuel's voice was calm, polite, as he pointed toward the necklace that had caught his attention. "I wanted to ask about that piece," he said quietly, his words filled with warmth and respect. Mr. Whitaker glanced at the necklace Samuel had pointed out and let out a barely concealed sigh, as if the question itself was a bother. He looked back at Samuel, eyes narrowing with judgment. "That's one of our most exclusive pieces," he said, emphasizing the word exclusive as though it were meant to keep Samuel at bay. "Perhaps you'd like to look at something more affordable," he added, motioning toward a different display case filled with simpler, less expensive jewelry. Samuel's face remained calm, but a faint glimmer of disappointment flickered in his eyes. He had been around long enough to recognize prejudice when he saw it. He didn't respond right away, letting the silence stretch for a moment. Mr. Whitaker tapped his foot, his annoyance growing, clearly eager to move on to other customers he deemed more suitable for the store's offerings. Finally, Samuel spoke, his voice steady. "Thank you, but I'd like to know the price of that necklace." His tone was gentle yet firm, an unmistakable sign that he would not be so easily swayed. Mr. Whitaker let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head dismissively. "Sir, with all due respect, that necklace is priced at well over $20,000. Now, if you'd like to browse, feel free, but I don't want to waste your time with items that may be out of reach." Samuel took in Mr. Whitaker's words, still standing with quiet dignity. not allowing himself to be ruffled by the man's thinly veiled insult. He looked directly at the manager, his steady gaze holding a wisdom and patience that seemed to unsettle Mr. Whitaker, if only for a moment. Without another word, Samuel nodded politely, thanked the manager, and slowly turned to leave the store. As he reached the door, he paused, taking one last look at the necklace and the opulent surroundings. With a quiet sigh, he walked out, his thoughts lingering not on the insult but on the necklace and the memories it had stirred. Out on the sidewalk, Samuel stopped for a moment, watching people pass by, each with their own stories, dreams, and struggles. He felt a deep sense of resolve growing within him, a silent decision forming. He took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and started walking, a new purpose guiding his steps as he headed in the direction of his lawyer's office. Later that afternoon, Samuel found himself seated across from his longtime attorney, a thoughtful man named Mr. Collins, whose office was lined with bookshelves stacked with leather-bound volumes. The two men had known each other for years, having worked together on various business ventures and personal matters. Mr. Collins was used to Samuel's calm demeanor, but today he sensed something different, a quiet intensity that hinted at something serious. Samuel sat back in the chair, his fingers lightly tapping on the armrest as he recounted the events of the day. He didn't dramatize or complain, nor did he exaggerate Mr. Whitaker's behavior. He simply shared the details, his voice steady and calm, but his attorney picked up on the hint of disappointment that lingered beneath his words. Mr. Collins listened intently, nodding in quiet understanding as Samuel described the condescension he'd faced, the subtle humiliation cloaked in politeness. When Samuel finished speaking, Mr. Collins cleared his throat, leaning forward with a look of concern. "It's not the first time, is it, Samuel?" he asked, his tone gentle yet firm. He knew Samuel had dealt with discrimination in various forms throughout his life, having come from humble beginnings and working his way up to become a respected businessman. Samuel's success was not one that had been handed to him. He had built it with grit, determination, and an unyielding commitment to his principles. But here, in this jewelry store, he had been reduced in the eyes of a stranger to nothing more than his appearance. Samuel nodded slowly, a small sigh escaping his lips. "No, it's not. But it doesn't get any easier," he admitted. "That necklace, it meant something to me. I wanted to buy it not just for myself, but as a reminder of my late wife. She would have loved it." He paused, a soft, nostalgic smile playing on his lips. "She had a way of finding beauty in everything," he murmured, more to himself than to Mr. Collins. After a moment, Samuel straightened up, his expression resolute. "But this isn't just about the necklace, it's about respect, dignity. Mr. Whitaker made a choice to judge me without knowing a thing about me, and I want to make a different kind of choice in return." Mr. Collins watched him closely, sensing the weight of Samuel's words. "What are you thinking?" he asked, curiosity laced with a hint of caution. "I'm thinking," Samuel replied, his voice calm but firm, "that I'd like to buy that jewelry store." The words hung in the air, and for a moment Mr. Collins was taken aback. But as he looked at Samuel's face, he understood the determination behind the idea. Samuel wasn't acting out of spite or anger. No, this was something deeper. A decision born from a place of quiet justice, a way to stand up for himself without lowering his principles. A small, approving smile crossed Mr. Collins's face as he reached for his pen. "Well then," he said, nodding, "let's make it happen." The next few days were a whirlwind of discreet meetings, signatures, and negotiations. Samuel preferred to keep things private, requesting that his name be left out of the public eye until the deal was finalized. The store's current owner, eager to retire and unaware of Samuel's encounter with Mr. Whitaker, was more than willing to sell, seeing Samuel's offer as an ideal opportunity to step away comfortably. Mr. Collins managed each step with precision, ensuring that Samuel's wishes were honored. Behind closed doors, Samuel was busy with phone calls, arranging financing, and discussing his plans with a trusted circle of advisors. He kept a low profile, his quiet dignity intact as he went about the process. With each signature, each phone call, and each handshake, Samuel felt his resolve strengthen. He wasn't buying this store out of pride or vengeance. To him, this was about creating a space where no one would be judged or dismissed based on how they looked. He envisioned a place where people of all backgrounds could enter, without feeling unworthy or out of place. And though he didn't share this with anyone, he thought often of his late wife, picturing her standing beside him, her hand in his, her smile full of quiet encouragement. Finally, after days of carefully coordinated steps, the deal was complete. Samuel Johnson was now the official owner of the jewelry store that had dismissed him just days earlier. He sat in Mr. Collins's office, holding the finalized contract in his hands, feeling a quiet sense of accomplishment. But he knew that the real moment he was waiting for, the one that would truly restore his sense of dignity, was yet to come. As he stood up to leave, Samuel thanked Mr. Collins with a warm handshake. The two men shared a silent understanding. This was more than just a business transaction. It was a decision that spoke of self-respect, resilience, and the quiet power of integrity. With the contract secured and his mind clear, Samuel took a deep breath and made his way back to the jewelry store. This time he didn't look at the necklace in the window. Instead, he focused on the door, knowing that what lay beyond it would soon be his to change. The morning sunlight filtered through the glass windows as Samuel arrived outside the jewelry store. This time, his steps were steady, his posture even more composed. He had dressed a little differently today, still modest, but with a certain elegance that hinted at the changes ahead. He took a moment to observe the store from the outside, noting the pristine displays and polished glass cases, all radiating a sense of exclusivity. For a brief moment, he saw himself reflected in the window, and he nodded, as if acknowledging the journey that had brought him to this moment. Inside, the store was as busy as usual, with customers browsing and clerks attending to their needs. Mr. Whitaker was at his post, speaking to a well-dressed couple about a diamond bracelet. He was animated, his usual polished charm on full display, completely unaware of the shift that had occurred behind the scenes. When Samuel stepped through the door, however, Mr. Whitaker's expression faltered slightly. He recognized Samuel immediately, and though he masked it quickly, a hint of annoyance flickered across his face. He clearly hadn't expected to see him again. Samuel walked in without hesitation, his gaze calm and unflinching. He waited quietly until Mr. Whitaker finished with the couple. The manager finally turned to him, his smile forced and strained, as though he were dealing with an unwanted guest. "Oh, it's you again," Mr. Whitaker said, attempting a polite tone, though the irritation was evident. "Is there something I can help you with today?" he added, barely concealing the hint of impatience in his voice. "Yes, actually," Samuel replied, his voice warm but with a hint of authority that was new. "I'd like to speak with you privately, Mr. Whitaker. There's something important we need to discuss." Mr. Whitaker's brows knitted in confusion. He seemed momentarily taken aback by Samuel's firm tone, but he quickly brushed it off, assuming that this man had simply come back to argue or lodge a complaint. With a dismissive nod, he gestured toward a small office near the back of the store. "Fine, let's make this quick," he muttered, as though indulging a minor inconvenience. They walked into the office, and Mr. Whitaker shut the door behind them, crossing his arms as he leaned back against his desk. "Now, what's this about?" he asked, his tone laced with impatience. "If you're here to inquire about that necklace again, I've already explained." Samuel raised a hand, a quiet gesture that immediately silenced Mr. Whitaker. There was a calm power in his demeanor, a confidence that made Mr. Whitaker stop mid-sentence. Samuel took a deep breath, his gaze steady and unyielding, as he looked the manager directly in the eye. "Mr. Whitaker," Samuel began, his voice low and measured, "I'm not here to ask about the necklace. I'm here as the new owner of this store." The words landed with a quiet force, sinking into the room like stones dropped into still water. Mr. Whitaker's face went pale, his expression shifting from confusion to shock, then to disbelief. For a moment he looked as though he might laugh, as if this were some kind of elaborate joke. But when he saw the seriousness in Samuel's eyes, the reality of the situation began to settle in. "Well, what?" Mr. Whitaker stammered, his voice faltering. You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious," Samuel replied calmly, his voice unwavering. "As of yesterday, I hold the deed to this store. I am now your employer." Mr. Whitaker's shock quickly turned to a mixture of disbelief and panic. He opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. The smooth, polished facade he had maintained for years was cracking, and his face betrayed a flicker of vulnerability that he had never shown before. He tried to regain his composure, attempting a feeble smile as he struggled to process the situation. "But how?" he managed to say, barely above a whisper. "I mean, why would you—" "Because I believe in respect, Mr. Whitaker," Samuel interrupted, his tone calm but firm. "When I came here the other day, you didn't know who I was or what I could afford, and that's fine. But you made a choice to judge me based on nothing but your assumptions." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I am here to ensure that no one who walks into this store ever feels the way you made me feel." The manager's face was now a mix of shame and resentment, his jaw clenched as he tried to keep his emotions in check. Samuel looked at him steadily, his gaze filled not with anger, but with quiet strength. He continued, his voice even softer, yet filled with conviction. "I've been in your shoes before, Mr. Whitaker. I've worked hard, dealt with my share of struggles, and faced more closed doors than I can count. But I never let it make me small or disrespectful. That's why I'm here today. Not just to own a store, but to create a place where everyone is treated with dignity." Mr. Whitaker looked down, his pride visibly bruised, his mind racing as he processed the situation. He knew, deep down, that his behavior had been wrong, and the weight of that truth seemed to settle on his shoulders. But there was nothing he could say, nothing he could do to change what had already happened. Samuel took a deep breath, then continued in a quieter tone. "I'm afraid I have no place for someone in this store who lacks respect for others. As the owner, I want employees who treat all our customers with dignity, no matter who they are or where they come from. And unfortunately, that means your position here has come to an end." The room fell into a heavy silence, with Mr. Whitaker staring at Samuel, the reality of his termination dawning on him. Samuel, on the other hand, felt a profound sense of closure. He had not raised his voice or spoken with malice. He had simply reclaimed the dignity that had been denied him. Without another word, Samuel handed Mr. Whitaker an official termination letter, folded neatly. He held the envelope out, waiting patiently until Mr. Whitaker took it with a trembling hand. Then, with a nod of respect, Samuel opened the office door, signaling the end of their conversation. He left Mr. Whitaker standing in the small office, the quiet finality of the moment settling over them both. For Samuel, it wasn't just about the store, the necklace, or even his own pride. It was about something much deeper, a sense of justice that could only come from holding on to his principles. As Samuel stepped out of the office and into the main area of the store, he was met with curious glances from the staff and a few customers who had noticed the tension in the air. He walked with an air of calm authority, his presence commanding respect. He could feel the weight of what had just happened, but he also felt a sense of relief, as if a burden had been lifted from his shoulders. This was his store now, and with it, he had a chance to create a place where everyone would be welcomed, no questions asked. One of the younger sales associates, a woman named Clara, approached him cautiously. She had seen Samuel in the store the other day and had witnessed how Mr. Whitaker had treated him. Clara, who was always kind to customers, was hesitant at first but finally spoke up, her voice soft but respectful. "Excuse me, sir. Mr. Johnson, is it? Are you really the new owner?" Samuel turned to her, his expression softening as he nodded. "Yes, that's correct," he replied with a gentle smile. "And please just call me Samuel." Clara looked at him, a mixture of surprise and admiration in her eyes. "Well, welcome then, Samuel." she said, a smile spreading across her face. She extended her hand and Samuel shook it warmly, feeling a sense of camaraderie already growing between them. He could tell Clara was genuine, someone who treated people well regardless of their appearance or background. It reassured him to know that there were people here who embodied the kind of respect and warmth he wanted the store to represent. With the rest of the staff watching, Samuel took a deep breath and decided it was time to address them all. He gathered the team together, his voice steady and warm as he spoke. "I want you all to know that things are going to be a little different from now on," he began, meeting each person's gaze. "This store belongs to all of us in a way. It should be a place where anyone, and I mean anyone, can walk in and feel respected, valued, and seen. That is the atmosphere I want to create here." The staff members exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement, others looking uncertain. Samuel continued, his voice carrying a tone of encouragement. "I know change can be difficult, but I believe that with a little kindness and understanding, we can make this store a place where people feel welcome and appreciated. This is not just about business for me. It's about respect." He saw several nods and smiles from the team, and even a few quiet murmurs of approval. Clara, standing closest to him, seemed especially touched. "I think that's wonderful, Samuel," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "I've always believed that treating people right makes a difference, and I think it's really inspiring to see that you feel the same way." Samuel smiled, feeling the warmth of her words and the support of those who genuinely believed in the vision he was presenting. He knew that not everyone would be on board right away, and that some might take longer to adjust. But he also knew that with time, patience, and consistency, he could turn this store into a place that aligned with his values. He paused for a moment, looking around at the store, taking in the sight of the familiar displays and gleaming glass cases. This time, however, he didn't see a place that was cold or unwelcoming. He saw possibility, a chance to build something meaningful, something that stood as a quiet statement of dignity and respect. With the meeting over, Samuel began moving through the store, chatting briefly with each staff member, learning their names and asking about their experiences. He listened intently, showing genuine interest in their stories and ideas. By the time he had finished, there was a noticeable shift in the atmosphere. The staff, who had once seemed tense and distant, now appeared more at ease, their faces open and relaxed. They had sensed the sincerity in Samuel's approach, and many of them felt a newfound hope for what the future held under his leadership. As he finally reached the necklace display, the one that had sparked this journey, he stood silently, looking at the emerald pendant with a soft smile. It felt like he was honoring his late wife, as though she were there beside him, sharing in this quiet victory. This wasn't just a piece of jewelry to him anymore. It was a symbol of everything he had stood for, and the values he wanted this store to represent. In that moment, Samuel felt a sense of peace. This journey had not been about revenge or proving his worth. It had been about respect for himself, for his late wife's memory, and for everyone who walked through those doors. As he stood there, he knew that he had done more than purchase a store. He had restored a piece of his soul, creating a legacy that would stand as a testament to kindness, integrity, and the quiet strength of standing up for what's right. The days that followed were a period of transformation for the jewelry store. Samuel worked tirelessly, side by side with his staff, to reshape both the physical space and the atmosphere within it. He encouraged his employees to bring forward any ideas they had for creating a more welcoming environment, fostering a sense of ownership and pride in the work they were doing together. One of the first changes Samuel implemented was subtle but powerful. He removed the overly luxurious, intimidating displays that seemed designed to make people feel out of place. Instead, he chose layouts that showcased the jewelry in a way that was both elegant and accessible, giving the store an inviting warmth. Samuel wanted the pieces to shine on their own, without creating a sense of exclusivity that made people feel unwelcome. He also brought in new staff members, carefully selecting people who shared his values and who genuinely enjoyed interacting with all kinds of customers. These new hires were from a variety of backgrounds, reflecting the diversity of the neighborhood, and creating a staff that made anyone who walked through the door feel represented and respected. Samuel's team was becoming a family of sorts, bound by a shared vision of kindness and dignity. As the store continued to evolve, word spread through the community about the changes taking place. People began to visit, drawn by curiosity and the hope of finding something special, not just in the jewelry, but in the experience of being there. Regular customers noticed the difference immediately. There was a sense of warmth and welcome that had not been there before, and they felt it in every interaction, every smile, every gesture. Clara, who had once felt hesitant about her role, now flourished under Samuel's leadership. She grew more confident, developing a knack for helping customers find pieces that resonated with them on a personal level. Samuel encouraged her to trust her instincts and even started giving her more responsibility, recognizing her talent for connecting with people. Her growth was a source of pride for him, a reminder that the changes he was making weren't just about the store, they were about the people within it. One afternoon, an elderly woman entered the store, walking slowly with a cane. Her eyes scanned the displays with interest, but there was a hesitation in her steps, as if she weren't sure if she truly belonged there. Clara approached her with a warm smile, offering assistance. The woman explained that she was looking for a gift for her granddaughter's graduation, something simple yet meaningful. Samuel, watching from across the room, felt a surge of quiet satisfaction as he saw Clara patiently helping the woman, guiding her to a delicate bracelet that sparkled subtly in the light. The woman's face lit up as she examined the piece, her fingers trembling slightly as she held it. Clara treated her with such kindness and respect that, by the time the woman was ready to make her purchase, she wore a wide smile, one that spoke of newfound confidence and appreciation. As the woman left, she turned back to glance at the store one last time, her eyes filled with gratitude. She nodded to Samuel, who returned her smile with a small nod of his own, his heart swelling with a quiet joy. This was the kind of experience he had envisioned, a place where people could feel valued, no matter their background or budget. Days like these became more common, each one reinforcing Samuel's belief that he was on the right path. He saw the store not as a business venture, but as a space of connection, a place where people could find a sense of belonging, even if just for a few moments. The store had become a reflection of Samuel's principles, a tribute to his late wife, and a testament to the power of kindness. In time, Samuel decided it was finally appropriate to unveil a small plaque near the entrance of the store. It was modest, yet beautifully crafted, with a simple inscription, "In memory of those who believed in kindness above all else." This dedication wasn't just for his wife, though she was always in his heart. It was for everyone who had ever felt overlooked, everyone who had walked into a store or a space and felt like they didn't belong. The plaque became a quiet reminder, both to the staff and to the customers, of the values Samuel held dear. And though he never made a big announcement about it, people noticed. Some would pause and read the inscription, a thoughtful look crossing their faces before they continued on. Others would smile, as if recognizing a shared understanding. As Samuel watched his store flourish, he felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond anything he had achieved before. He knew that his journey had come full circle, and that he had created something lasting, something that would carry on long after he was gone. As the jewelry store blossomed under Samuel's guidance, it became more than a place to buy fine pieces. It became a part of the community. People no longer walked by intimidated or indifferent. They felt drawn to it, curious to see what made this store different from others. Regulars came by just to chat with Samuel or Clara, often stopping for a cup of tea that Samuel had started offering to anyone who wanted a brief pause from their day. Customers began to notice that the store felt less like a high-end impersonal shop and more like a welcoming space, a place where stories were shared and connections were made. One afternoon, as Samuel was arranging a new display, a young man entered the store. He appeared unsure, glancing around nervously. his worn clothes a stark contrast to the jewelry around him. Samuel noticed the young man immediately, recognizing the hesitancy in his posture. He could see that the young man was debating whether he even belonged there, as though he had stumbled in by mistake. Samuel approached him with a warm smile, as he did with every customer. "Good afternoon," he greeted him kindly. "Can I help you with anything?" The young man looked down, fidgeting with his hands. I don't know," he mumbled, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just looking, I guess." He seemed almost ready to turn and leave, but Samuel's gentle demeanor encouraged him to stay. "No rush at all," Samuel replied, his tone relaxed and inviting. "Take all the time you need. We're here if you have any questions." The young man nodded, visibly more at ease, and slowly began to look around. As he examined a simple silver bracelet, Samuel watched quietly, giving him the space he needed. Eventually, the young man looked up, his expression a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "Actually," he said, his voice a little stronger, "I'm looking for something for my mom. She's done a lot for me and I want to give her something special, but I don't have a lot to spend." Samuel nodded, understanding exactly how he felt. "That's very thoughtful of you," he said warmly. "We have beautiful pieces that don't have to be expensive to mean a lot. Why don't we take a look together?" He led the young man to a display with modest but elegant jewelry, pieces that carried simple beauty, without a high price tag. The young man relaxed, encouraged by Samuel's sincerity, and began asking questions about each piece. Samuel took the time to answer, never rushing or making him feel out of place. Together they chose a delicate necklace with a small, shining pendant that was just within the young man's budget. As Samuel wrapped the necklace, he added a small, thoughtful touch, a handwritten card with a simple, heartfelt message for the young man's mother. He didn't mention it, just slipped it into the box with a smile, knowing that it would add a personal touch to the gift. The young man, his face lighting up with gratitude, thanked Samuel profusely. "You don't know what this means to me," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you for everything." Samuel just nodded, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "It's my pleasure," he replied. "And remember, it's not about the price. It's about the thought and love behind it. I'm sure she'll cherish it." After the young man left, Samuel felt a quiet pride settle within him. These were the moments he had envisioned when he first took over the store. It wasn't about profit or high-end exclusivity. It was about making people feel valued, appreciated, and welcome. Word of these interactions continued to spread, and soon people from all walks of life visited the store. Some came to buy, some to chat, and others simply to experience the warmth and kindness that Samuel had infused into every corner. The store's reputation grew, not for its luxury, but for its humanity. Customers left with more than just jewelry. They left with memories, connections, and sometimes even life lessons. Months passed, and one day an unexpected visitor arrived, the former manager, Mr. Whitaker. He entered the store quietly, looking around with a hint of disbelief at the changes. The friendly chatter, the welcoming staff, and the new, open atmosphere were unlike anything he remembered. Samuel, noticing him, walked over calmly. Mr. Whitaker looked uneasy, shuffling his feet as he glanced around. Mr. Johnson," he began awkwardly. I wanted to come by. I've been hearing a lot about what you've done here." Samuel regarded him with a steady gaze, a quiet kindness in his eyes. "Hello, Mr. Whitaker," he replied evenly. "You're always welcome here." Mr. Whitaker hesitated, as if struggling to find the right words. "I just wanted to say, I realize now that I was wrong. I didn't see it before, but the way you've changed this place, it's remarkable. I never thought a jewelry store could be like this." Samuel's expression softened. "Thank you for saying that," he replied simply. "Sometimes it's hard to see the potential in people or places when we're used to seeing things a certain way. But everyone deserves a chance to feel valued, Mr. Whitaker. That's something I've always believed." Mr. Whitaker nodded, a trace of regret crossing his face. If I could go back, I'd have done things differently, he admitted quietly. Samuel placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. It's never too late to make a change, he said gently. What matters is what we do with the lessons we've learned. With that, Mr. Whitaker nodded, his face reflecting both humility and relief. He turned to leave, offering a quiet thank you before he walked out. Samuel watched him go, feeling a sense of closure. He had turned the page not only for himself, but for everyone who had been part of his journey. As he stood there, surrounded by the community he had nurtured, Samuel knew he had created something far more valuable than a jewelry store. He had created a legacy of kindness, respect, and dignity that would live on, touching lives in ways he could only begin to imagine. And with each person who walked through those doors, that legacy continued to grow, quietly shaping the world around him, one small act of kindness at a time. The following month cemented Samuel's jewelry store as a treasured place in the community, drawing visitors from neighboring towns and even further. Stories about the store and its welcoming atmosphere spread, and people came not just to browse or buy, but to experience the warmth and respect that Samuel and his team radiated. Samuel's quiet mission to create a haven of dignity and kindness blossomed beyond his expectations. Every day, he welcomed people who were eager to be part of the store's unique charm, an undeniable combination of quality, care, and community. One afternoon, a well-dressed woman entered, holding herself with an air of quiet sophistication. She moved through the store, her eyes taking in the pieces with genuine interest, and eventually approached Samuel directly. She introduced herself as Ms. Evelyn Foster, an influential writer for a prestigious lifestyle magazine. She had heard about the store's transformation and wanted to cover it for an upcoming issue, highlighting the rare sense of humanity it brought to the jewelry business. Samuel was taken aback, humbled by the attention. He had never sought recognition, and the idea of his story being featured publicly felt a bit surreal. But as Ms. Foster spoke, she emphasized the importance of stories like his, ones that showed how a single person could change an entire environment simply by standing up for their principles. She believed his journey could inspire others, not only in the business world, but in communities everywhere. After a moment's thought, Samuel agreed, understanding that the story wasn't just about him, but about the values he had built his life around. He wanted people to see the impact of kindness and respect, especially in a world that sometimes overlooked them. Ms. Foster spent the afternoon speaking with Samuel and the staff, taking notes, and capturing candid moments that reflected the unique spirit of the store. She observed interactions, listened to Samuel's philosophy, and spoke with customers who had felt a difference in the way they were treated. The article, she promised, would do justice to the story's heart and the man behind it. When the article was published, it made an impact far beyond Samuel's expectations. Entitled, "A Jewel of Kindness, the Store That Redefined Luxury." The feature quickly gained traction, bringing attention not only to the store, but to Samuel's story and the values he had fought to uphold. Readers from across the country were inspired, moved by the simplicity of his mission and the power of small actions to create change. Letters began arriving from people who shared their own stories, thanking Samuel for reminding them that compassion and integrity still had a place in the world. The increased attention brought new faces into the store. People traveled from near and far, some to see the place they had read about, others to meet Samuel himself. With each visit, Samuel welcomed them as he had from the beginning, with a warm smile, a listening ear, and a cup of tea for those who wanted to stay and talk a little longer. The store's growth was steady, and though it was now far more successful than before, it never lost the sense of humility and grace that Samuel had instilled in it from the beginning. As the business continued to thrive, Samuel invested back into the community, sponsoring local events, supporting small businesses, and offering internships to young people eager to learn about business and kindness alike. His goal was to create opportunities for others, especially those who might otherwise feel overlooked, just as he had once felt. Through these initiatives, he became not only a respected businessman, but a beloved figure in the community, known not only for his store, but for the heart and wisdom he shared with all who crossed his path. One day, as Samuel was locking up the store after closing, he looked around at the quiet, empty space, now filled with the memories of countless interactions, lessons, and moments of connection. It struck him then that his late wife's spirit was very much a part of this journey, woven into every corner of the place they had built together in spirit. She had always believed in him, and in honoring her memory, he had found a way to honor himself as well. With a final, contented glance around, Samuel turned off the lights, knowing that he had done more than change a store. He had changed lives, starting with his own, and in doing so, had created a legacy that would live on long after he was gone. The jewelry store was no longer just a business. It had become a beacon of hope, a reminder that even the smallest acts of respect and kindness could light up the world in ways no one could have imagined. And as he stepped out into the cool night air, he carried with him the quiet satisfaction of a life well lived, guided by values that had proved more precious than any jewel in the world. Over time, the store's reputation continued to grow, but Samuel never allowed the success to change its core essence. It remained a place where everyone, regardless of status or background, was treated with dignity. Samuel's approach attracted people from all walks of life, each visit creating another layer in the story of his remarkable journey. One evening, as the day's final rays of sunlight filtered through the store windows, Samuel sat behind the counter, going through the day's receipts with a quiet contentment. Suddenly, the gentle chime of the entrance bell rang, signaling a visitor. Samuel looked up to see a young woman entering the store, her expression hesitant and slightly nervous. She wore a modest dress and held a small, worn purse close to her side. "Good evening," Samuel greeted her warmly, standing up and offering her a welcoming smile. "How can I help you today?" The young woman returned his smile shyly. "Thank you, sir," she replied softly, her voice carrying a note of determination. "I'm here because I've read about this place, and I wanted to see it for myself." She paused, looking around at the displays. "I wanted to buy something small. My little sister, she's graduating soon, and I want to get her something special. I don't have much, but—" Samuel's smile grew as he saw the hope in her eyes. "You're in the right place," he assured her. "We'll find something beautiful for your sister, something that will mean a lot to her." He guided her to a selection of pieces, taking care to point out the ones that were within her budget, but still held elegance and charm. They talked as they looked over each option, and Samuel learned that the young woman had been working 2 jobs to save up for her sister's gift. Her story touched him deeply, reminding him of his own journey, of the sacrifices he had once made to support his loved ones. After a few minutes, the young woman settled on a delicate silver pendant, its simple beauty reflecting the purity of her intentions. Samuel placed it in a small velvet box, adding one of his handwritten notes to make it extra special. As he handed the box to her, he saw the gratitude in her eyes, and he knew that this small moment meant more to her than any grand gesture. As she reached into her purse to pay, Samuel shook his head gently. "Consider this a gift," he said kindly, "from one big sibling to another. Your sister is lucky to have someone who cares so much for her." The young woman's eyes filled with tears, and she pressed a hand to her mouth, clearly overwhelmed by his gesture. "Thank you. I don't know what to say. I'll never forget this," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Samuel gave her hand a gentle squeeze, his heart swelling with a quiet joy. "Just promise me one thing," he said with a smile. "Pass on the kindness when you can. That's all I ask." She nodded fervently, wiping a tear from her cheek as she clutched the small box close to her heart. "I will. I promise. Thank you. Truly." As she left, Samuel watched her go, feeling a sense of fulfillment that transcended any business success. This was why he had made all those changes, why he had stayed true to his values even when it wasn't easy. Each connection, each act of kindness, these were the true gems in his life, the ones that couldn't be bought or sold. That night, as Samuel closed up the store, he took a final look around, seeing not just jewelry displays, but a space filled with memories, with stories of lives touched and hearts uplifted. He knew that he had built more than a store. He had built a legacy of compassion, one that would continue to grow, passed down through every customer who left with a little more kindness in their hearts. In the quiet solitude of the store, Samuel whispered a soft, "Thank you," into the air, feeling the presence of his late wife beside him, as if she had been with him every step of the way. He knew she would be proud of him, not just for what he had built, but for the person he had become in the process. And as he turned off the lights and stepped out into the night, Samuel carried with him the comforting knowledge that his journey had been worth every struggle, every moment of doubt. He had honored his values, uplifted others, and in doing so had created something timeless, a legacy of kindness that would shine long after the store itself was gone. In the months that followed, Samuel's jewelry store became known as much for its warm spirit as for its beautiful pieces. Locals often referred to it simply as Samuel's Place, a name that captured its transformation from a high-end, intimidating shop to a community treasure where everyone felt welcome. The success was humbling for Samuel, who continued to work quietly and diligently, never allowing the popularity to alter his purpose. One late autumn afternoon, Samuel was surprised by an invitation to attend a community awards ceremony. To his astonishment, he learned that he had been nominated for a Beacon of Hope Award, an honor recognizing individuals who had made a meaningful impact on the lives of others. Though touched, he was hesitant to accept the attention, feeling that he had merely done what anyone in his position should have. The day of the ceremony arrived, and Samuel dressed in a simple, dignified suit, feeling both excited and slightly overwhelmed. When he entered the hall, he was greeted by familiar faces, all smiling and expressing gratitude for the positive changes he had brought to the neighborhood. Customers, staff members, and even people who had only heard of his store's story came up to shake his hand, each with their own story of how Samuel's kindness had left a mark on their lives. When it was time for the award presentation, the host spoke about Samuel's journey, from the day he had been treated dismissively at the jewelry store to his quiet acquisition and transformation of the business. As the story unfolded, the audience was captivated, many nodding along as they recognized pieces of Samuel's story that had rippled through the community. The host finished with words that resonated deeply with Samuel. "Samuel Johnson has shown us that kindness and respect are not only good business, but the foundation of a strong community. He took a place built on exclusivity and turned it into a space of inclusivity, a place where everyone feels they belong. In doing so, he's taught us all the true meaning of dignity and compassion." With a gentle smile and heartfelt applause from the audience, Samuel made his way to the stage. He took a moment to gather his thoughts, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on him. He hadn't prepared a speech. He had come simply to show his gratitude for the recognition. But standing there, seeing the faces of people he had come to know and care for, he felt compelled to share a few words. Clearing his throat, Samuel began, his voice steady but soft. "I want to thank each of you," he said, looking out over the crowd. "Not for this award, though it means more to me than I can say, but for the support, the trust, and the kindness that you've all shown. This journey wasn't something I planned. It was simply an act of standing up for what I believe in, that everyone deserves to be treated with respect, no matter who they are or where they come from." He paused, letting the words settle. "My store is just a place, a small corner in this big world. But I've learned that it's the people who fill a space that truly give it life. Every person who walks through our doors leaves a little bit of their story with us, and I'm grateful for each and every one of those stories." He glanced down, collecting his thoughts before looking back up with a warm smile. "This award may have my name on it, but it belongs to everyone here. To my wonderful staff, who share in this mission every day, to my customers, who bring kindness and warmth into our store, and to my late wife, who taught me that even in a world that sometimes feels cold, we can always choose to be a light." As Samuel finished, the room erupted in applause, a standing ovation that reflected the deep appreciation and respect the community held for him. He stepped down from the stage, humbled and filled with a quiet pride that was beyond words. This moment was a testament to all he had built, not through wealth or grand gestures, but through small, consistent acts of kindness and respect. Leaving the ceremony that night, Samuel felt a sense of peace that filled him from within. His store had indeed become a beacon of hope, a symbol of everything he stood for. And as he walked home under the glow of streetlights, he knew that his story, a simple tale of standing up for dignity, would carry on, inspiring others to see the power in kindness, to recognize the value in every person, and to remember that sometimes the smallest gestures have the greatest impact. As the seasons changed and winter settled over the town, Samuel's store continued to thrive, even as the world outside grew quieter under a blanket of snow. The holiday season brought a unique magic, as people came searching for gifts, not only for loved ones, but to connect with the warmth and spirit of Samuel's place. On a snowy December morning, Samuel arrived at the store early, taking in the soft glow of holiday lights he had strung across the windows. Clara and the rest of the staff had decorated the interior, filling the store with simple yet elegant touches: garlands, small wreaths, and a sparkling tree in the corner, under which they had placed a collection of wrapped gifts intended for families in need. This season held special meaning for Samuel. He remembered his late wife's love for the holidays, how she used to spend hours baking treats to share with neighbors and wrapping gifts with the utmost care. Inspired by her spirit, he had decided to host a gift of kindness event. For every purchase, a portion would be set aside to create gift packages for underprivileged families in the community. It was Samuel's way of giving back, of spreading the warmth that had brought him to where he was. The day of the event was bright and bustling. Families filled the store, and children's laughter echoed as they admired the holiday decorations. Samuel greeted each guest personally, his heart swelling with joy as he saw familiar faces and new visitors alike. Then, as the evening approached, a small group of children entered the store, led by a young woman with a warm, friendly smile. She introduced herself as a volunteer from the local shelter, bringing the children by to enjoy the lights and decorations. They were wide-eyed, filled with wonder at the sparkling jewelry displays and twinkling holiday lights. Samuel's face lit up as he bent down to greet them, shaking hands with each child and asking their names. The youngest, a shy boy clutching his sister's hand, looked up at Samuel with wide, curious eyes. "Are you Santa?" he whispered, his voice filled with innocence and awe. Samuel chuckled, his eyes crinkling with warmth. "No, I'm not Santa," he said gently, "but I know him. And I think he sent me to make sure you all have a special holiday." He led the children to the decorated tree in the corner, where a small pile of gifts waited just for them. One by one, he handed out the wrapped presents, watching their faces light up as they opened them to find warm scarves, mittens, and small toys. Items they could keep as their own, reminders that they were loved and valued. As the children hugged their gifts close, Samuel noticed the young woman from the shelter watching with tears in her eyes. She approached him quietly, her voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea what this means to them," she said softly. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson. You've given them a memory they'll carry for a lifetime." Samuel placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, his voice filled with sincerity. "It's my pleasure. Everyone deserves to feel special, especially during the holidays." As the evening came to a close and the last of the guests made their way out, Samuel stood by the door, watching the snow gently fall, covering the world in a peaceful white stillness. He felt a deep sense of contentment, knowing that he had honored not only his wife's memory, but also the values he had built his life upon. Just before he locked up, Clara approached him, holding out a small, neatly wrapped package. "This is for you, Samuel," she said, her eyes shining with gratitude. "It's from all of us. We wanted you to know how much we appreciate everything you do." Surprised, Samuel unwrapped the gift carefully. Inside was a beautiful framed photograph of the entire staff, taken in front of the store, each face filled with joy and pride. At the bottom, engraved in elegant letters, was a message: "To the man who brought light to our lives, one act of kindness at a time." Samuel felt a lump rise in his throat as he looked at the photograph. It was a simple yet profound reminder of the lives he had touched and the community he had helped build. He looked up at Clara and the others, his heart overflowing with gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "This means the world to me." With a final smile and a wave to his team, Samuel locked up the store, carrying the photograph with him as he stepped out into the snowy night. He walked home through the quiet streets, each step a reminder of the journey he had taken and the legacy he was leaving behind. And as he entered his home, he placed the photograph in a spot where he could see it every day, a symbol of the love, respect, and kindness that had defined his life's work. In that moment, Samuel knew he had done more than build a business. He had built a family, a community, and a legacy that would continue to shine, even long after the lights of his store had faded. As the years rolled on, Samuel's place became an institution, a staple of the town's identity and spirit. The jewelry store had long transcended its original purpose. It had evolved into a gathering place, a symbol of community, and a testament to kindness and integrity that Samuel had cultivated with every interaction, every small act of generosity. Samuel himself had grown older, his hair now fully silver, his steps a little slower. Yet, his presence remained as warm and steady as ever. Each morning he arrived early, greeted the familiar faces of his staff, and welcomed his customers with the same gentle smile. His wisdom and kindness had touched so many lives that he had become a mentor not just to his employees, but to the whole community. One bright spring day, Samuel called a special meeting with his staff. He stood before them, looking out at the familiar faces he had come to see as family. Clara, now a senior manager and trusted advisor, sensed there was something important in his eyes. She and the others listened closely as Samuel spoke, his voice calm but filled with emotion. "My friends," he began, his gaze warm and proud, "I have spent some of the best years of my life here, alongside each of you, watching this store become something beautiful. Together, we have created a place where people feel welcome, respected, and valued. It's more than I ever could have dreamed." He paused, letting his words settle over them, then continued, his voice soft. "But there comes a time in every journey when it's time to pass the torch. I believe that time has come for me." A murmur swept through the room, a mixture of surprise and sadness. Samuel held up his hand, reassuring them. "I'm not leaving entirely," he said with a smile. "I'll always be here, just not every day. It's time for me to spend more time with my family, to enjoy the simple things, and to know that this place is in the best possible hands." He looked directly at Clara, whose eyes were filled with understanding and emotion. "Clara," he said, his voice warm and unwavering, "you've been with me since the very beginning, and you have embraced the heart of this place as if it were your own. I would like you to take over as the store's new manager, to lead this family and carry on the legacy we've built together." Clara was speechless, her eyes welling up with tears. She had never imagined a day when Samuel wouldn't be at the helm, but she also felt a deep sense of honor and responsibility. She stepped forward, taking his hands in hers. "I'll do my best, Samuel," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I promise to keep your vision alive, to carry on everything you've taught us." Samuel squeezed her hands, his own eyes glistening. "I know you will," he replied softly. "You have been my greatest supporter, and I trust you completely. I am so proud of you, of all of you." The transition was a gentle one, marked by heartfelt farewells from the community and a celebration honoring Samuel's legacy. Customers, friends, and townspeople gathered to express their gratitude, each one sharing stories of how Samuel had touched their lives. Some spoke of the kindness he had shown them during difficult times. Others recalled small gestures that had meant the world. As Samuel looked out over the crowd, he felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. Every face held a story, a memory, a connection, each one a reminder of the life he had built. Not through grand achievements or wealth, but through consistent, quiet acts of kindness and respect. When the celebration drew to a close, Samuel gave one final message to those gathered. Remember that kindness is a choice, one we have the power to make every day. This store will carry on because of each of you, because of the love and respect you bring into it. It was never just mine. It has always been ours. The crowd erupted in applause, and Samuel felt as though he were walking away from not just a store, but a legacy that would continue to thrive, held in the hearts of those he had touched. With Clara by his side, and the store in capable hands, he felt a peace he had never known. In the days that followed, Samuel settled into a quieter life, watching his legacy continue from afar. He often walked by the store, peeking in to see Clara welcoming customers, the staff carrying on his traditions and new faces experiencing the kindness he had worked so hard to establish. And on one particularly beautiful spring day, Samuel visited the store once more, not as its owner, but simply as a customer, blending in with the people who came to feel the warmth of Samuel's place. As he browsed the familiar displays, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not just for the store, but for the life it had given him. Samuel knew, deep in his heart, that he had created something lasting, something that would endure beyond his time. And as he left the store that day, he took one last look at the inscription above the door, the one Clara had added in his honor. Welcome to Samuel's place, where kindness lives on. He smiled, his heart full, knowing that his legacy of respect, dignity, and kindness would carry on, generation after generation, like a jewel that would never lose its shine. Years passed, and Samuel enjoyed the rhythm of his days in quiet contentment. He found joy in the simple things, morning walks, afternoons spent with family, and the occasional visit to the store where he was always greeted as a beloved friend. He watched as Clara led Samuel's place, with the same warmth and dedication he had instilled, growing the store's legacy with new ideas while preserving its heart. Under her leadership, the store continued to be a cherished part of the community, a place where people felt seen, valued, and connected. One day, Samuel received a letter in the mail from a young man named James. The letter was handwritten, its words carefully chosen and filled with gratitude. James introduced himself as someone who had once been a shy teenager, struggling to find his way in life. Years ago, he had entered Samuel's store, nervous and uncertain, wanting to buy a small gift for his mother. He had never forgotten how Samuel had treated him with respect and kindness, helping him choose a piece he could afford without ever making him feel out of place. That moment had stayed with him, shaping his life in ways he hadn't realized until now. James went on to explain that he had recently started his own small business and had drawn inspiration from the principles he had learned from Samuel's example. He wanted to create a space where kindness was as valued as profit, where people felt welcome, regardless of who they were or what they could afford. His business was still small, but he was committed to building it with the same spirit he had experienced at Samuel's place. The letter ended with a simple message. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for teaching me what it means to lead with kindness. I hope to carry on what you started." Samuel read the letter slowly, taking in every word. He felt a deep, quiet pride, knowing that his efforts had rippled out in ways he could never have anticipated. James's letter was a reminder that the impact of kindness stretched far beyond what one could see. It reached into hearts, shaped lives, and carried on through generations. As he sat in his armchair, Samuel thought of his late wife and the legacy they had built together, piece by piece, moment by moment. She had believed in the power of kindness, and through him, her belief had touched countless lives. Now, young people like James were carrying that legacy forward, creating a world that was a little brighter, a little kinder. With a smile, Samuel folded the letter and placed it in a small wooden box where he kept mementos from his life's journey. He knew that he had left his mark not just on a business, but on the hearts and minds of people who would carry his values into the future. It was a legacy that would continue to grow, spreading like seeds planted in fertile ground, nurtured by every act of kindness that followed. In that quiet moment, Samuel understood that his journey had come full circle. He had lived a life guided by respect, compassion, and integrity, and he had passed those values on to others who would carry them forward. He felt a profound peace, knowing that he had left the world just a little better than he had found it, and that his legacy would live on. A legacy of kindness, shining brightly like a jewel that time could never fade. As Samuel's years gracefully moved forward, he continued to feel the echoes of his life's work in the gentle ripples of kindness that returned to him. More letters found their way into his mailbox from people who had once crossed paths with him at the store, sharing their own stories of transformation inspired by his quiet, dignified example. Each one was a reminder of the seeds he had planted, and of how the store had grown into something far beyond a simple business. One crisp autumn day, Clara invited Samuel to a special event at the store. She kept the details a surprise, only telling him that it was important and that he absolutely had to attend. Curious, Samuel agreed, arriving at the store just as the golden afternoon light filled the space with a warm glow. The familiar bell chimed as he stepped inside, but this time he was greeted by an unexpected sight. The store was filled with familiar faces from over the years. Loyal customers, former staff, community members, even some of the children who had once visited during the holiday season, now grown and standing proudly with families of their own. The room was buzzing with warmth and excitement, and as Samuel took in the gathering, he realized that this was a celebration, a tribute to the legacy he had built. Clara stepped forward, beaming as she greeted Samuel and guided him to the center of the room. "Samuel," she began, her voice filled with emotion, "we're here today because you've given all of us something truly special. You taught us the power of kindness, the value of respect, and what it means to build a community. We wanted to show our gratitude and honor everything you've done." She gestured toward a beautifully crafted plaque on the wall, positioned near the entrance for all to see. Samuel turned to read the inscription, his heart swelling as he took in the words, "In honor of Samuel Johnson, a man who taught us that true wealth lies in kindness. May his legacy live on in every heart he touched." The room filled with applause, and Samuel felt his eyes mist over. He hadn't expected such an outpouring of love and appreciation. For him, the work had never been about recognition. It had been about doing what felt right, creating a space where people could feel valued and seen. But standing there, surrounded by so many who had been a part of his journey, he felt a deep, abiding sense of gratitude. One by one, people approached him, sharing memories and stories of how he had impacted their lives. Some spoke of times when his gentle guidance had given them courage. Others shared how his kindness had inspired them to pass it on. Each story was a thread in the tapestry of Samuel's life, woven with moments of quiet significance, all leading back to the core values he had held so dearly. After everyone had spoken, Clara presented him with a small book, its cover embossed with his initials. Inside were letters, notes, and photographs from people far and wide who had wanted to thank him, but couldn't attend. As he flipped through the pages, Samuel recognized faces from years gone by, memories brought back to life with each page. The book was a treasure, a testament to the lives he had touched and the enduring impact of his gentle philosophy. Overwhelmed, Samuel looked at Clara and the people around him, his heart brimming with emotion. "Thank you," he managed, his voice thick with gratitude. "Thank you for this and for believing in what we built together. I may have started this journey, but it's each of you who have kept it alive." He paused, looking around the store that had been the backdrop of his life's most meaningful work. "Remember that this place, this legacy, it belongs to all of us. Continue to treat each other with the kindness and respect we've shared here. That's the true gift we can give to the world." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the room, Samuel stood among his community, knowing that he had lived a life of purpose. His legacy wasn't in wealth or possessions, but in the hearts he had touched and the lives he had uplifted. And as he walked out of the store that evening, hand in hand with Clara and his loved ones by his side, Samuel knew his story would live on, carried forward by the countless people who would forever be touched by the simple power of kindness. After that unforgettable evening, Samuel continued to live quietly, carrying the warmth of his community's gratitude with him. Each day felt like a gift, enriched by memories of his journey and the legacy he had sown. Though he rarely visited the store now, he knew it was thriving under Clara's care, a place alive with the same spirit of kindness and inclusion he had fostered. One evening, as the first chill of winter crept in, Samuel sat by his window, watching the snow begin to fall. He was surrounded by mementos of his life, letters from grateful customers, photographs of the store over the years, and, most importantly, the memories of those he had loved and lost. He reflected on his journey, from the humble beginnings with his late wife to the quiet triumphs of Samuel's place. His life had been a mosaic of moments defined not by grand gestures, but by quiet dignity and simple kindness. The peacefulness of that evening mirrored the peace Samuel felt within himself. As he looked out at the softly falling snow, he whispered a quiet, "Thank you," to his wife, to his community, and to life itself for giving him the opportunity to leave a meaningful mark. In the days that followed, Samuel felt his strength begin to wane. His steps became slower, his voice softer, and he spent more time resting, content to let his memories carry him. His family and friends visited often, filling his home with laughter and warmth. Clara, ever faithful, brought updates from the store, sharing stories of the latest customers who had come looking for Samuel's place, eager to experience the kindness they had heard so much about. One winter morning, as Samuel lay peacefully in bed, his breathing slowed and his heart filled with a gentle calm. Surrounded by love, he slipped away quietly, as gracefully as he had lived, leaving behind a world forever touched by his spirit. News of Samuel's passing spread quickly through the town, and the community gathered to honor him in a celebration of his life. People shared memories, recalling his warmth, his kindness, and the countless ways he had made their lives better. They spoke of the lessons he had imparted, not through grand speeches, but through his actions, each one a testament to the values he held so dearly. Clara, who had been by his side until the end, organized a final tribute for Samuel at the store. She decorated it with candles and photographs, filling the space with warmth and light, just as Samuel had always done. In the center of the room, she placed the book of letters and memories that had been gifted to him, inviting others to add their own stories and messages of gratitude. On the day of the tribute, people arrived from near and far, filling the store with love and remembrance. Each person added a note or a memory to the book, creating a rich tapestry of lives touched by Samuel's kindness. It was clear to everyone that Samuel had left something far more valuable than any piece of jewelry. He had left a legacy of compassion, a legacy that would continue to shine through every person he had inspired. As the tribute came to an end, Clara stepped forward to say a few words. She spoke of Samuel's quiet strength, his unwavering commitment to treating everyone with dignity, and the way he had transformed a simple store into a place where people felt valued and loved. "Samuel taught us that kindness is timeless," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "And though he is no longer with us, his legacy lives on. Each of us carries a part of him, and as long as we continue to honor his values, he will never truly be gone." With those words, the community joined in a moment of silence, each person reflecting on Samuel's life and the impact he had made. As they stood together, they felt a profound connection, as if Samuel himself were there, watching over them with his gentle smile. In the days, months, and years that followed, Samuel's place continued to thrive. Under Clara's leadership, it remained a beacon of hope and kindness, a reminder of the man who had built it with nothing more than respect, compassion, and a belief in the power of goodness. People still spoke of Samuel Johnson, telling his story to newcomers who visited the store, sharing how one man's quiet determination had changed the lives of so many. And as each person left Samuel's place, they carried with them a piece of his legacy, a reminder that kindness was not just a choice, but a gift, one that had the power to outlive its giver, touching lives long after they had gone. Samuel's story became a part of the town's history, woven into the fabric of its identity. The memory of his gentle spirit lingered in every corner of the store, in every interaction, in every smile. And as long as people remembered his legacy, as long as they carried forward the values he had cherished, Samuel Johnson would live on, his kindness shining eternally, like the rarest jewel in the world. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the impact one person can make, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring tales. Join us as we explore more stories that prove kindness and resilience can truly change the world.